we know what to do. I think that the root, the most important thing first, before we talk about all the, ways to implement strategies to get it done, is to actually come to the place where for you, it's important. Because it doesn't matter if I tell you, hey, I write it down, I schedule people coming to my house to train with me, so that I have to stay accountable. I walk the outside of the grocery store, whatever the million things are that we can say, until we get to a place that we understand and we commit to the fact that taking care of myself is important, no trick is going to help you.
Gabby Reece, welcome to Passion, Love, Pursuit podcast. It's an honor to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, absolutely. We were talking about how we ran into each other at the famous Air One in Calabasas, and it's a place that you don't want to frequent too often, but it is one of the best places to go to if you want to get delicious supplements and food and the hot bar. All of the stuff is so good there, but it's I frequent there too much.
Yeah.
Well, Gabby, it is just kind of surreal actually to be connecting with you in person, because I remember in my younger years, I'm about 10 years younger than you. And I remember looking at magazines, you on the cover, gracing the cover, your beautiful physique, gorgeous. And I remember looking at you, I'm like, this is an iconic woman in sports. And I didn't do sports when I was younger, but I was very fascinated with like supermodels and just, woman empowerment. And I was like, that's a beautiful woman. And so it's just surreal sitting with you today and being able to like reflect on how long I've known of you actually since my younger years. But so it's an honor to sit with you and have this conversation. As I've been talking to a lot of people in the health and fitness space, you're definitely one of the best in this space to go really deep into health and fitness. So I would love to just start there. So because you've had many successes in your career, from pro volleyball modeling, Nike's first female spokeswoman, a New York Times bestselling author, serial entrepreneur, top rated podcast, and so on. What has been the hardest challenge in that, or possibly the biggest lesson you've learned in all of it? If you could sum it up from there.
I think in life, when you're growing up, oftentimes it's not that you're not encouraged to not go your own path, but I think you are encouraged to sort of follow, most of us anyway, a sort of typical path. And maybe just because I was raised in the Caribbean and I kind of had an unconventional path, some of the challenging parts was one, I wasn't groomed to be successful. And two, it was sort of like, well, this feels like where I want to go, but I can't see the path. I don't know for sure. So you're moving along with this weird duality of like, I'm confident enough in myself and the thing I'm feeling inside that's driving me, but I really don't know what the hell I'm doing, and it's sort of like those two things all the time living it. And you get a different relationship with it as you get older, and it's worked out a few times. Proof of concept is a pretty nice thing when it happens a couple times. And my husband and I talk about sometimes when you start to learn that everything is a formula, that process gets easier. It doesn't get sometimes less uncomfortable, but it does get at least emotionally a little easier. Like, oh yeah, I've been through this before.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talk about self-confidence in doing the thing. At least you believed in yourself as you seeked pursuing volleyball or pursuing modeling or whatnot. So can you talk a little bit about confidence? How did you help really reinforce that when going back to your like younger self, when you started pursuing sports and actually getting to a pro level? Like, how did that look for you in developing your confidence?
It was, and at times, I mean, again, less now, but it was uncomfortable. It's hard to sort of say, I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to be competitive. I'm going to say I want to win, because when you play a sport, what you're saying is I want to win. And then inside being like, not sure that you'll be able to, and not letting that be the dictator or the dominant emotion that you have to keep finding its place. Self-doubt, right? Like you go, oh, there it is. And you have to sort of tuck it back and say, but I'm doing this. So I might as well, that's not going to help me. That feeling is not going to be productive. So I have to put that someplace that it's manageable. So it maybe was more of the skill that you develop versus becoming so confident you don't experience that anymore. I don't think that's the case. I think you do experience it. I just think you build a relationship with it, and you learn to not let it take over. And that comes again. That's why hard work is so important,
For
because
sure.
everyone is different, but at least for me, and I think it's not so uncommon, I really also needed to feel like I was earning it. And so the confidence, if you're kicking your butt and getting your butt kicked enough, you start to feel like, no, wait a second, I've been working hard here. And so that is very, very, very helpful.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I think that is something that kids today need to learn more, is being uncomfortable and actually working for something and proving yourself you can do it, opposed to what I think a lot of, especially teenagers, experience. Like everything is so much easier today, easier in the way of like things could come to you easier, or I could go to this thing and avoid this. And, so I think that with that resilience and going after the thing, that helps build the confidence to do another thing and then create competence, which I think is so key, especially when you're pursuing a sport. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's
So,
well, in anything, right? Like learning to fail and get up the next day, and that you can survive it, and learning to have a win and receiving that, but also building upon, or asking for help, or looking for outside guidance. Like, hey, this isn't working. Can you? That's what coaches are. So I think it's a combination of a lot of things. It's not just having the skills to do it or to work hard, but it's also going, something's not working, I need to change it up. So I think you get all of that.
absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Well, talking about health and fitness a little bit, since this has been really the journey throughout your whole life and the focus and priority for you, I'm curious, how has this changed over the years? Let's say 10 to 15 years ago. Is there a different reason why you are so adamant to put health and fitness as a priority?
I think the good news is that I have a lot of good reasons, and so they haven't shifted that much over the years because they're really good. They're sound reasons, and I think one's coming from performance and understanding how good it feels to feel good. I caught on to that early. And then what's interesting is, like, you can get injured as an athlete. All athletes have had injuries. And so there have been plenty of times where, for example, you're sitting in a chair and you need to get up and walk to the kitchen counter that's a whole 10 feet away. And it's like a federal production. And so what happens is you do that enough and you think, oh, wait a second, I'm pretty clear about what is important. Because if I can't function, so much, everything else kind of goes out the window. So
Absolutely.
maybe I received that message pretty early, and it's the gift, right? It's the gift of feeling good, of having your health, of possessing health, the gift of an able body. These are things that I didn't need, I didn't take for granted for whatever reason. And so I am a soldier about taking care of that, because I don't need to learn that lesson.
I love that. How do you prioritize it into your day with your busy schedule, being an entrepreneur, with all the things, speaking, podcasting, all the things? How do you make sure that is always at the forefront of your day, whether if, some people do the morning or evening, whichever works best for you, but how do you make it a
Yeah.
priority?
I lose the energy if I don't do it in the morning. because the day
Same.
piles on. I know a lot of people can use the evening and they use it as an outlet. I'm not able to do that. I get too drained emotionally from, meetings and emails and whatever, all the things that are happening. So I hit that first thing in the morning. I had to shoot these last 3 days, and so one of the days I had to, work out at 6:45. That's just the way it is. So whatever I can do to just make sure it's done first has always been the way I've managed that.
I love that. So that's a great strategy. I would love to talk about some more life strategies possibly you have to stay fit, healthy, strong, energized. Is there some other things that you make sure to implement into your days?
I know it sounds kind of silly, but I write everything down. I have a very big planner because I know everybody does electronically now, but you can't actually see everything.
I agree.
So I have a planner. So the reason I bring that up is, and again, this is my luxury. Some people have a different type of job than I do. Um, and if I see like stuff starting to get really too chunky and overscheduled and it becomes day to night, day after day, I'll start to figure out how to rhythm that out and spread it out so that I know that there's, quality time with Laird or my girls or, things like that. So what I've learned is how to pace myself. No is a word I use a lot. I'm not uber social during the week nights. I'm usually go to bed early. If I'm going to do something social, it'll be on the weekends. And of course, there's always exceptions. You can't be rigid, but I think it's like a dedication to this lifestyle and to this pace that everything is built around that. And I know that people know what to do. They do. They know how. There's so much information now that we know what to do. I think that the root, the most important thing first, before we talk about all the, ways to implement strategies to get it done, is to actually come to the place where for you, it's important. Because it doesn't matter if I tell you, hey, I write it down, I schedule people coming to my house to train with me, so that I have to stay accountable. I walk the outside of the grocery store, whatever the million things are that we can say, until we get to a place that we understand and we commit to the fact that taking care of myself is important. No trick is going to help you.
So true. I was actually being interviewed this morning on somebody else's podcast, and I talked about this very thing. He asked me the question, what's your non-negotiables? And I started before saying my non-negotiables. I said that I actually know how much more important it is to have my non-negotiables because I realize the effect of not making sure I stay connected to those non-negotiables. And I was neglecting my most core pillars that are my non-negotiables. And because of that, I actually have now health things that I'm addressing because I added on more stress and it's because I wasn't doing those pillars, as you say, like movement or, handling your stress better and things like that. So I think it's so true is knowing what your body needs, your soul needs, whatever you want to get clarity on, and then acting in accordance to that and really honoring it. But I think that's so true. And I love how you write down your calendar and look at it and look for making this synergy and pace that works for you to feel
Yeah.
at ease. I think that's a beautiful thing. And I think sometimes we do say yes too much. And I love that you use the word no more often than not. It's
Yeah.
really
And I think
honoring yourself in that.
100, well, because you're the one who's living it, right? And the other thing is it's sort of like understanding that one thing I have definitely learned from hearing over and over from other people is it's not about adding more things to do to be healthier. It's about eliminating the things that keep us from being successful. And so that has been a real fundamental idea that I've added into everything I'm trying to do, even my work projects. Like if I'm trying to encourage people to be healthier, I'm trying to take away things for them to do so they can be healthier, not go, okay, that's awesome. And on an empty stomach, 30 minutes later, you should take this. And then after you've worked out, do this. It's like, it's too much. And so how do
Right.
we get to the real core of things? And but be honest with ourselves. Cause I think a lot of people unknowingly give a lot of lip service to, I really want to be healthier. I'd love to look like that or whatever. But they haven't thought that through to what that means, which usually means some work is entailed, some strategy is entailed. And another thing that is really important that I know we know, but sometimes it gets lost because people are busy and doing the very best they can, is our relationships. Our if it's a partner, if it's not a partner, if it's a kid, if it's not a kid, if it's a dear friend, we need love and support. And it can be a chosen family. I think that is so important. So I say no a lot during the weeknights, but I still will invite people for dinner, and it might be at 6:30, but
Okay.
it's communing with people and with your loved ones and making sure that the relationships are vibrant and that, things aren't getting swept under the rug with your partner. Because I think that this is the quiet stuff that really kicks our ass in a different way if we're not tending to those. So I just want to add that as sort of an adjunct to it, because it's a really powerful part that we sort of put on as separate. Like, okay, relationships are there, health and wellness is over there, and then I have like my work and my this and that. It's like, well, no, how do we, bring all of these elements together?
It's such a beautiful thing to go into. Actually, I would love to talk a little further about it, because you, obviously, for people that don't know, Gabby's husband is Laird Hamliton, pro big wave surfer. And you two are, of course, you have your business together, Laird Superfoods, and among other things. And so you're obviously business partners, married for over 20 years. Obviously, you're a mom. And how do you, with all that, make sure to nurture each part of that, if you want to say, like, have a healthy marriage, have intimate and passion? Like, how do you manage that with everything? What would be your advice also for others?
Well, it's interesting, right? Because it does take two. And so I can only control how I'm willing to show up in the relationship. And fortunately, for the last over 28 years, Laird seems to be, and in certain ways even better than I do it, saying like, I would like to show up. So I think we're not going to make anyone do anything. But luckily in our situation, our values are similar. It's like, hey, if we're going to do this, like if we're going to be in a relationship, let's have it so that it's enjoyable. It's not perfect. We've gone through some hard times. But that, like, it's like everything. I don't want to phone anything in. I don't want to phone in my friendships. I don't want to phone in parenting. I don't want to phone in, I've been with my husband a pretty long time. I want to show up. I want to show up every day. And so let me tell you, it's not easier necessarily, right? It's like, even the way I talk to Laird, I always say I am not nicer to any person than I am to Laird. I don't always feel like it. I'm annoyed. I'm tired. He talks loud, like whatever my million things are. But I am committed to saying, okay, the easiest person for me to be lazy about would be him.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to feel special. I want to feel like someone's excited to see me. How do I expect that to happen if I'm not even able to do that for this other person? So we call it the upcycle, right? Like, you want to get in that upcycle. Like, I want to show up. I want to treat you really great. And somehow you're motivated and inspired. Now you're doing the same for me. And here we go. We're going in the upcycle. So again, this goes back to discipline and work. If I just went based on how I felt, like, oh, I don't feel like it, I feel like it, I'm never going to feel like it. Inside, some days I'm grumpy. I'm like, oh, my family, it's overwhelming. It's like all the things, right? You go, what's life all about? And then you have to go, yeah, that's human, totally normal. Feel it, see it, look it, even say it to your closest friend, like, oh God, and then go back to, what kind of life am I hoping to have? And what does it look like? And what are the things I need to do and say, and the ways I need to show up to participate in that happening? And so I start with me first, Laird and I next, the family next, and everything else outside of that. And I don't sacrifice anything in order. Now, of course, my kids are first, but I still am not like going to hang on a cross to be their mother, because I think that in the long run, one, I'm not being a good example to them. And two, what am I going to do? Blame them for my unhappiness later? So I think it's weirdly like a selfishness so that you can give more.
I love that. I mean, the self accountability, like checking in with yourself, like, how could I better serve this relationship or show up better? I think that is always first, of course. Uh, you did say that you said it's you first and then Laird and then, your kids. I would love to hear your kind of deeper about this of how nurturing the relationship, how that serves then your children. Because I think some people think like, oh, you should put the kids first, but that's like totally skewed because lots of reasons. But what is your opinion on that? Because I think that really speaks a lot of volume right there.
One thing I've learned is everybody has to do it the way that works for them, truly. For me personally, my kids are going to grow up. They have grown up. I only have one kid at home. And they go out and build a big old life with their own relationships. And that's what I want for them. And I'm going to be here, with it's going to be Laird and I.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, what are the constants? I'm the constant, so I better take care of me, because if who knows what happens, I'm still going to have to live with me. The other constant that I'm committed to is that it's Laird and I. And so how do we tend to that relationship and let that relationship grow? It doesn't mean it grows the same way as when you're single. I mean, when you have a baby, man, like that is kind of what's happening. So it ebbs and flows. I get it. But as your kids become older and a little more independent, how do you find moments for that relationship to blossom and continue to grow? Um, and um, and that takes effort, it takes energy. But I think the alternative for me is not worth it. And when I have seen when people put their children first, it's great. But I feel that the couple gets put on the outside versus an allied front that
Yeah.
together are raising these younger humans. And then also then the willingness to forget themselves. And mothers are obviously probably a little more, it's more natural for them to do that because it's so easy to give everything to everybody all the time for us, I think. And then somehow, your kids are gone and you're middle aged and you've gotten spit out of this process in a pretty tough way because you put everyone first.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a way, and I feel like they should tell this to women. You can't have everything all at once. You probably could have sort of everything you think you want, but it's sort of in a different cycle, right? And so it's the same thing for this. I think you could really serve your family and your children and your partner and take care of yourself. Um, and it's hard. It is hard because it might mean sometimes you miss a practice of one of your kids' sports thing. Do you have to be at every practice? Are you a bad parent if you don't go? Is it okay if you just go to the weekend competitions? So I think it's kind of always asking those questions.
Yeah. And also, we're an example for our children, right? So if you're neglecting yourself, they're going to learn like, oh, I don't matter as much as maybe other people or whatnot. They think they matter only to the world, right? When they're teenagers and whatnot. But when they get older, then they'll be like, oh, like they'll neglect themselves because they didn't learn it through their parents,
Exactly.
possibly. So that's something also.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
have three daughters, and so I want them to do it whatever style works for them, but I would like to model somebody who, listen, I'm nobody's victim over here, and I'm definitely not going to be a martyr. And you'll
Yeah.
never hear me say, you know what I did for you? It's like, no, I'm their mom. That is my job. And so I think that the only way I can not feel that way is I got to take care of myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of you two as parents, obviously in sports, I'm just curious for, I don't know if your kids, your three girls, are in sports as well, but for anybody listening right now that possibly wants their kids to do some sort of activity, meaning get off their phones, get social, get in teams, like learn these life skills, which I think is tremendously built through teamwork in sports. What would be your advice? Because, well, first, let me ask you the question: are your kids in sports? Or I know you said two are out, out of your house now, but are they in sports? And then also, what would your advice be if some parent is listening and they are struggling to get their kid to do some sort of activity?
I know it's a tough one, and you think I'd be better at it than I am. I'm not, because I decided a long time ago I wouldn't push them, because I wasn't going to make activity a punishment.
Yeah, for
Right. So
sure.
it's like this weird thing. And so the fact that both Laird and I are in sports, how are our kids going to rebel? They go the other
Right.
way. So my
Yeah.
oldest daughter naturally did sports, and she was in Hawaii, so canoe paddling and things like that. But she told me very early, I think she was um, 16 or 15, and she's like, and she's a very bright kid, woman now. I don't want to do sports for my living. And I was like, oh, nobody thinks you need to do sports for your living. I go, your dad and I had limited access, limited. I go, this is one of the things we
Yeah.
could
Different
do.
world.
I go, your dad has a love affair with surfing, so it's also a little different. So it was really having that conversation with them. And then my middle came to it late and loves tennis and is actually traveling,
Oh, great.
trying to play tennis. And then my youngest, it became, this is a kid who is very athletic, very tall, no interest. So it became, hey, listen, here's the deal. You will need to play one sport in your choice in school, and figure out the ways, because I need you to understand how to move your body and take care of yourself. But whether you go beyond high school or not, I don't care. There's no expectation. Um, but I think exposure, be an example, you know, play. I think when you have a parent that is using some kind of activity as play versus I'm working out, maybe they can show that side of it. So I wouldn't. I think the only thing I could suggest would be, hey, make the invitation to explore and be curious and to play, because what we want young people to do is not to work out. We want them to play. And I think then they'd be playing and their friends would be like, we're all going to play on this team and do this thing. They might be like, oh, that's cool. I think that would be the best way. And then also, like, hey, let's pick one. Can you commit to it? Once you commit to it, you just got to finish the season, kind of thing.
Yeah. I love that advice. And I think that's a great way to look at it, is actually not being forced, but like how to make it fun. And then again, a parent leading by example. So like maybe it'd be like, hey, let's go play some tennis or like play around, and then you never know. Yeah. To not, that's interesting. Sometimes when you're in the health and fitness space, I could speak for myself at least, because I'm addressing some health things. I'm like a supplement queen. I love optimizing my health. I'm kind of into biohacking and all the things. And sometimes I can cross the line of getting obsessed, I must admit. But it's because
Mhm.
it's the standard I have for myself. Like my standard is optimized health in all facets. So for somebody that maybe kind of gets obsessive, what would be your advice? Like, because I think sometimes when we're on this, like, oh, I need to get healthy and fit or whatever it may be, and let's say that hasn't always been your identity, like, you know, yourself and myself, it's been a part of our lifestyle for so long that it's kind of comes hand in hand. But for somebody else that's trying to get into it and they get kind of obsessive, like, I have to go work out, I have to do this. What would be your advice to kind of loosen the load and take it more? Because I think that causes more stress, really. So, what would be your advice?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, stress, you can even eat perfect and move regularly. If you have enough stress, it is the number one, right? It's the number one no, the number one killer, if you will.
Yeah.
So it's not productive. Like, and it's kind of like worrying. Even though worrying feels like you're doing something, you're not doing anything by worrying. You're not
Right.
doing anything by stressing out about what you have to do. I'm guilty of this in different ways, right? Like I have, like everybody, a pretty busy schedule. I could be worrying about something in 2 days. That's not helping. Like, what's that doing? So, the notion of being present and then saying, okay, so these are the things that feel important to me. I'm going to eat a certain way and move and have my work and my relationships. Okay. So the most productive thing you can do is, well, how are you going to do that? What's your plan? What's your strategy? What time of the day are you doing it? Where are you going? What activity will you be doing? And just take all that energy, putting it into a real actionable plan. And after that, I can't think of a more beneficial way to approach it than being like, I have to work out, because also then you're going to resent, or you're going to frame working out as a have to that's got negative connotation, that you do have that kind of stressful kind of loop that you're putting back on yourself. And one thing I say all the time, perfection is not the goal. It is impossible. So we set up all these things and we think that we're supposed to be perfect. And if you're going to do this for a really long time and you're going to commit to this, you have to do it in a way that reflects not only who you really are, but what stage of life you're in. If you're a new parent, if you're in college, if you're middle age, like whatever it is, and then put together a real plan that is smart and makes sense. But to obsess or freak out or do whatever, listen, I know people that eat perfect and train perfect, and they're such control freaks. Everything, it's just a nightmare. And so that's not the point. And so it's, you got to take it easy, but but you have to be grown up. Like, are you putting the work in? Do you have a plan? Great. You're being a grown up. Take care of business and then relax.
Yeah. Yeah. Great advice. I love it. So I touched a little bit on identity, and I think identity is a big thing. You kind of alluded to it earlier with motherhood and, when your kids go off. And I imagine, of course, in your sports career, very much of your identity and people that know you is this iconic volleyball player and, supermodel and all these things. Like, that is what people see you as, that they know of you, even though you're way, way more than that. Let's talk about identity a little bit, like how people could not take, this status as everything they are, and not, to be so attached to this idea of success that they lose themselves when it's possibly not what it used to be. For example, I mean, pro volleyball player, when are you still playing now at all? Do you still go out and play? No,
I,
just out of
because I
curiosity.
can't, I don't have time to practice at
Mm.
all. So it's not fun.
Oh, okay, gotcha. And it's, I'm
Yeah.
sure,
You're
just the whole
to
different
do, and
level.
your
So
body's like, I don't know what you're doing. That had a time in a season, maybe,
yeah.
and it's just I've been busy, and I think maybe there's could be a time and a place, or you could do new things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So what would you say about identity, and for people to really not put all their stake into, I'm a mother and that's what I am. And then when the kids are gone, they're like, I don't even know who I am anymore. What would be your advice to really just, you know, identify yourself with something bigger than that? If you want to say, when I say bigger, I don't mean like motherhood isn't a huge thing, but you know what I mean by that.
I say this a lot, and weirdly, I know it sounds weird, but I saw this documentary, and Mary Tyler Moore said this. So it's definitely, there's nothing original about it. I'm just a person first, and I'm a woman. I'm in this world as a female, and that's not a controversial statement, by the way. And
Yeah.
I am then other things. I am a partner to someone. I am a job I cherish so much. I am a mother. Um, but Laird and I have talked about this a lot. And, Laird's love for surfing it's very real. But even Laird's like, I'm not a surfer. I surf. I'm just Laird.
Right.
And I think it's so important. Hey, it could be like, hey, I'm just, you know, I'm Robert, and one of the things I am doing at this time in my life is I'm a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, or I'm a, you know, whatever it is. And our value and who we are and our essence aren't the things that we do. Now, has my life and my lessons, especially being a parent, has it been, you know, are they connected? 100%. My perspective, just so many things I've had and needed to learn and continue to learn. I have learned from my children and by being their mother, but at the end, I'm still just me. And and so when we can release the identity and think like I'm kicking ass right now, so it's all good, and like, hey, it's a slow time or it's a quiet time, and so, oh, I'm not valuable. It's like, well, no, you are valuable. But you're not more valuable because you're kicking ass and less valuable because you're not. And I think that distinction is also important, right? Sometimes
Absolutely.
we can be like, oh, I'm killing it. It's like, no, it's good, going good for you right now. You're just really fortunate. Enjoy it, you know? And and so I've always kind of looked at it that way. And so I try not to wrap my self-worth into those things. It's easier, you know, certain days than others, but I feel like once you practice it enough, but that's why those relationships are important, because the
Mm.
people you have relationships with, not only the relationship you have with yourself, but with others, it's like, I love you. Not I love you because you do this, this, that, and this. No, I love you. And that is really powerful.
I love that. It's so true. And I love how you lay that out. That's just coming back to, like, as you said, Laird as an example. It's like, no, I'm not a surfer. I love to surf.
Yeah, I
I
serve.
love that.
If there's any person who would be a something, it would be Laird would be a surfer.
Yes.
And it's like he's like, no, I'm Laird and
It's
I
amazing.
surf. And I'm just like, it's I mean, the line is getting very close between those two, let me tell you. But
That's so good.
you know, it's even like when you're crushing it and people are like, you're crushing it. Don't bite that hook either, because the fall sucks, you know,
Yeah.
because we're going to have times in our life that it goes, "Vroom, vroom." It just does. And
Yeah.
so that's why taking care of yourself, or, you know, staying a student and staying curious as a person, that helps you ride through all that BS.
I love that. And I think it's important what you also talked about is when you're succeeding and you're really successful, and then let's say you're having a downtime, some people will feel less worthy because, they're not at this point that they once were. And yeah, so they'll beat themselves up because of it. And I think that's where we start to corrode our self-worth when it's not worth it. Yeah. It's really getting
We've
to
all
know
met,
yourself. And
I always say, like, you sometimes you'll meet a very, and I put this in quotes, like a tough guy, but a real one, like maybe a martial artist, master, sensei, something, right? Who's trained a lot, put a lot of work in, very quiet, very still, very peaceful. But you're like, wow, something's up with that person. They're not going, hey, I'm a black belt and blah, blah, blah.
right.
And I think we all actually gravitate towards and see value in someone that can be still. Like, oh, what's there about that? They don't shake your hand and be like, you know, I used to be and I own the thing and I created the thing. It's like, okay, thanks. But when you meet a person and they have that stillness because they have that sense of self,
Mm.
that is so powerful. Now, are you going to get more attention for that or more likes on the, internet? Probably not, but you're probably going to feel pretty good.
I see that in you, to be honest. Just speaking to you now, I could see that in you. You're very humble, and you don't put, obviously you appreciate the success you've had and the path you've been on, but you don't take it for granted, and you also don't put yourself per se on a pedestal because of this. I just see that in you just by your energy. I imagine that to be true.
Well, hopefully I'm a little smarter than that.
I'm sure, of course.
You know
Well,
what
let
I
me talk
mean? Like,
about what's that?
hopefully, I'm just saying, like, that would be a very hard. I don't want to learn that lesson.
Mm, lessons in
Uh,
life. My goodness.
yeah, I always say I'll pay up front. I don't want to pay on the back end. So I would like to try to live to the best of my ability. I make mistakes every day, but paying up front. I want to work hard. I
Mm,
want to try to be honest. I want to try to, because I feel like life's like, are you getting it yet? Because otherwise the
right.
hits just keep coming, right? So I'm also selfishly, if I could be really honest, I'm also trying to make it easier on myself.
Smart. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. That's just being wise, to be honest. Yeah. I love that. So I would love to talk about your environment because I believe environment strongly influences how we show up in life and how we react to life. And you touched on relationships, of course, but how do you create an environment to thrive? What does that look like?
That's pretty easy. If I just do from the superficial standpoint, I don't like a lot of stuff, and my environment is very clear and clean because. And the reason I say that is because I do have chaos in my mind because like everybody I have a crazy schedule and a lot of moving parts, but from multiple types of directions. Like, right, I don't have one job. I have 5 jobs. And each one is important. And so, that I start there. Like I wake up each day and I get myself organized, like the way I dress, even if it's gym clothes, everything is organized in a way so it's almost like a uniform. Like, okay, here we go. And
Mm-hmm.
I keep my environment clean and organized so that I can be creative and sort of deal with the chaos. Now, the other parts of that are, if you looked in my fridge, it's probably full of food that I want to eat versus, I have a naughty drawer in my house that is for one of my daughters. She can go get the weirdest snacks on the planet, whatever she wants. They're in there. Of course, she opens them, barely eats them, but she feels her right that she can get it. And they
Mm-hmm.
all get through it, by the way. My older two don't do that. They don't eat that stuff anymore. Um, and and then it's about having people around. So my husband being certainly the kind of the most powerful figure in my everyday life as far as influence, which is the hope, the attempt is to show up, is to think about how I'm going to react and what I'm going to say, and to have friends that if I did say, oh, I have an idea, I think I'm going to pursue that they would say, great, that's great. Now, it doesn't mean I don't have friends that aren't honest with me, because I do, but it's just being surrounded by people that in their own way they're trying to do that too. It's really important. Laird is a great fortification for me. He's sort of this blanket of protection to things that maybe I don't want to deal with. And he also is a very good example to me of somebody who's really trying, and who is loving and who is flawed and completely transparent. So it's weird when you have somebody that you live with that you're very close to, that you go, I keep believing in people because I live with a person that I know, they're trying. So it also so keeps my attitude about everything is possible. Why
Mm-hmm.
not dream if you feel to, but also keep believing the best in people, because that's what we'll see, right? Whatever
Of
we
course.
believe, wherever I go in my day, guess what? I run into a lot of nice people. I run into a lot of good people. I have a lot of wonderful and beautiful exchanges with human beings. And so I think that that's the other reminder. My environment is set by my perspective.
Oh, so
And
true.
so, how do I get my perspective oriented correctly through my food and my movement and my relationships and my house, the way I keep it, to get oriented in that right way? So, when I go out into the world, most times that perspective I see, that's what I'm seeing. I think it really starts from that. That's been
Mm.
really helpful.
So good. So powerful, that statement alone. I love that because it really is, yeah, what you focus on, you'll see more of and you'll experience more of. Yeah, 1000%. It's gold. I would love to talk about a little bit about Laird Superfoods, which is co-founded with your husband, obviously. And I just recently got some supplements, and I've been having my superfood creamer in the morning with my coffee, and then my the electrolyte coconut mix because I
I'm
need to
drinking the.
get more potassium. Oh,
Hmm.
you are? It's funny. I have water, and I was like, oh, I forgot to add it to that, but I'm going to have it after this because I'm going to work out. But so, uh, love it. Love your products. And there's so many out there. I mean, there's a plethora of products, but I want to talk to you about just a little bit about superfood supplements. Uh, why is it important people get electrolytes? I'm asking this specifically because it's actually a really hot topic now of the importance of electrolytes. And I'm imagining, especially because you and your husband are in sports, is even more reason to consume electrolytes. So I would love if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Laird Superfood actually was started with coffees and creamers, and then we branched out because our whole thing was, hey, where are all of us, you know, needing support? And so one of these ways was in hydration. You'll hear that a lot of people are not hydrated.
Right.
So the original idea was we have something called Aquamin, and it's a bioavailable mineral from Iceland. Because a lot of drinks that maybe have electrolytes, supposedly, they also have a lot of sugar. So I think because of our soil and then our food doesn't have a lot of the minerals and the nutrients, and then let's say you are extra active, and even the water that we have access to isn't often as alive or hydrating as it can be. So that is why we went into this space, but we tried to do it in a way that we could have minimal sugar. So it's a freeze dried coconut. It's freeze dried at the source, and so we have the kind of more performance, the ones you and I were talking about, the mango and the lemon, but we also have the coconut, which is, Laird has a deep love affair with coconuts because it's one of the most diverse things are out there, right? You can eat the meat, you can drink the water. I mean, there's a coconut sugar. There's all kinds of things. So that is that's sort of like the hero of most of our products. So that is why we got into that space, because it's hard for us to get it where from the usual places. Even like if you were doing
So
high
true.
water content fruits and veggies, let's say. But it's the minerals and the macro, all of those things that we're not getting so much as much as we need from our food.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's what's so important. And I'll definitely leave everything in the show notes for people to go check out all your supplements and everything you offer. But it's so true is that it's impossible to get all the minerals and vitamins from food for over 100 years now. So it is essential we supplement, but supplement with what your body needs and the time of, the season in your life and whatnot. And I'm supplementing a lot of things because my body, I actually, found out I did a hair mineral analysis test. And so I found out what is not absorbing, what I'm missing, what that's influencing, and all these things. So, it's very important we find out like what is our body needing most right now.
Yeah.
So,
I think that's a great reminder. Everybody should get a look under the hood, get their blood work done.
yeah.
I would probably assume most of us need vitamin D. The other thing about hydration is it just impacts everything, right? Like how well you
Right.
sleep, you wouldn't think it. It's connected to your hydration. Obviously, the quality of your skin. I always say there's a way we can get everybody. One person's like, oh, my heart. You don't want to go to bed dehydrated, especially for your heart. But then for other people, you could be like, your skin will be prettier. And they're like, oh, okay, I should be hydrated.
Yes.
Your flexibility, your physical flexibility is connected to your ability, how hydrated you are. You can literally stiffen up just by not being hydrated. So the list is long. Elimination, all these things are impacted by hydration. So that's why it's so important.
So important. I actually think anybody should really try it at least for a week and see how you feel. You actually will notice a difference of how much you need it by how
Yeah,
much you change just in a week of using
it's
electrolyte. Yeah. Yeah.
it's true.
Thank you for sharing that. Like I said, that will be all in the show notes. So I'm just curious a little bit, just kind of wrap up a little bit, but what are you most excited about? You have a phenomenal podcast, by the way. Everybody, of course, go check out the Gabby Reece Show. You interview incredible people. I've had some of the people as well on my show, but you do have an incredible show, and so I want to give you kudos to that. But what are you most excited for right now?
The podcast does excite me because I like the learning and the kind of seeing if we can break it down and make anything actionable so people go, oh, that helped me out today. And Laird Superfood, I mean, just from a very technical standpoint, we actually have a product coming out that I am very excited about because it was because of my podcast. So I was interviewing Dr. Stacy Sims and Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, and I just kept hearing over and over about women and protein, and when the first and last consumption of the day, and blah blah blah, all the stuff. And so I went to Laird Superfood and I said, could we do a protein creamer? And we have one. It's so good.
Oh, nice.
And
Oh,
so
nice.
I'm excited because that's the stuff that really you just go, that's what it's about, right? Like
You're
the
like
creative
front loading it.
Yeah, doing it, saying like, hey, there seems to be a need, we can do it, and it tastes unreal. And so I'm excited about that. But I'm kind of not steady Eddie, but I really get a lot of pleasure from the very small, simple things in life. I know that sounds silly, but it's like, hey, my kids are all seem pretty, they're all in a pretty good spot. They're normal stuff going on.
Right.
I mean, one of them is a junior in high school. And Laird and I are healthy in a peaceful place. And so it's so strange where that's kind of it for me. Like, I love these other things and I love accomplishing things. I do. I'm not going to lie. I'm a competitive.
Yeah,
I like to,
of course.
strive and do all these things. But what gives me that sense of fulfillment is like, hey, everybody's pretty good and we're trying to do good work. And beyond that, it's like, okay, I don't think
I love that.
I don't think it's the grand moments that really give it to us. I think it's all those, family dinners and a hug with a friend and a badass workout all strung together that really give us that sense of purpose and fulfillment.
1000%. And I love that. That's so inspiring. Honestly, just saying you find peace in just where you're at and the simple little blessings in life, in the everyday. I love that. Amazing. Well, I want to ask you a question I ask all my guests, but first,
Okay.
can you just share best place for people to find you? I mean, it's pretty obvious, but
Yeah, everything's pretty much at Gabby Reece, Reece. If people want to look at, Laird Superfood is lairdsuperfood.com. And we have we have greens and reds. We have a lot of incredible, we have bars with no natural flavors. That's a big one. We don't use natural flavors, and sometimes it's a dance to get products done. And so, and I fitness side, I have XPT Life, which is sort of our breathing and pool training and other things. But before you ask me the question, I also want to say something because I was like, in just the simple things, I also worry. And that is the thing I'm constantly being like, I wake up at 2 a.m. and mind grind. So I also want to say that it's constant. Like I'm constantly going, is that helping? No, it's not. Okay, let's get into our practice. So I have zero figured out. I just, have these practices to kind of, once I'm in it, go, okay, let's get out of it. So I just want to say that because listen, when you love
you're
people
human, of course.
the world is crazy right now. I mean, come on, let's not, I want to say to people, if you're healthy right now, that expression, like there's a time to survive and a time to thrive. I actually think if people are surviving pretty good, you're winning. I think if they're like, oh, what's going on and not thriving, I think it's a very hard time to thrive right now. So I also want to just kind of remind people, like, if you can be steadfast and pretty cool, you're doing great.
That's amazing. That's awesome. And I thank you for your realness, to be honest, because that's exactly, of course, but the thing is you're mentioning is like, you are very in tune with yourself. You have that awareness that you're like, okay, I recognize I'm going down a spiral right now. How do I return back to calmness?
That's it.
So I think that self-awareness is really like mastering life. And honestly, we're just along on this journey, figuring out along the way, you know. hitting a lot of bumps, getting the lessons we need to get, so yeah. We're all in the classroom, put it that way. So just the final question, if you were to share a piece of wisdom, a life lesson that you've learned along your journey, and you feel you just need to shout it out to the world, what would that piece of wisdom be and why?
Something I've learned in maybe the last 6 or 7 years is how much we live by the stories in our mind, the narratives that we make up. I get it. And I'm really good at that. And I went through some stuff with one of my daughters in particular that led me to a woman named Byron Katie. And it was the notion of self-inquiry. She has 4 questions. Is it true? Can I know it to be true for sure? Who am I when I think those thoughts? And who would I be without that belief? And the idea of how much suffering is created by what goes on up in here in our brains, it really became so evident to me. And so I would say that when you find yourself in those stories, if you can have the tools to at least be able to observe it a little bit versus just, bite it hook, line, and sinker and live it, I feel like we can suffer less. That has been very helpful. I mean, the obvious ones of like, don't take it personal and all those things.
Right.
That's a given. And really try to find the way to trust yourself and follow yourself because it's your life. And I know everyone else's life looks sexy and interesting, but it's your life. It's your magical life. And if you can do it your way, it always seems like that works out best.
Love it. Oh, beautifully. I love that. I love those questions. I need to remember that. I'm going to put that on my wall because it's so true.
It's called the work.
What's that?
It's badass. Like it's so helpful and it's amazing how quickly you can unwind a story all of a sudden, especially like with our family members, like a parent or like a cousin or whatever, a sibling. Man, you can unwind some stuff quick and save yourself a lot of headache.
Of course, stress and sleepless nights, whatever it may be. That's so awesome. I love that. So good. So good. Gabby Reece, this has been such an honor. I'm truly just ecstatic to have you on the show and just thank you for making the time.